You're watching LEX 18 News, State of the Commonwealth.
Welcome back to State of the Commonwealth. Day by day, as we get closer to the election, we see Governor Matt Bevin and Democratic candidate for governor Andy Beshear taking jabs at one another, but they're not the only ones shaping what this election could look like. Joining me this morning, Dr. Michael Zillis, assistant professor at the University of Kentucky. Dr. Zillis's research includes judicial politics, interinstitutional politics, political behavior, and political communication. Good morning, Dr. Zillis.
Good morning.
Let's start off with who could loom large on this race, Donald Trump. Matt Bevin is certainly bringing him into this race. Have you ever seen anything like this before, a possible Trump effect?
Yeah, so it's very interesting, but it's something that has certainly been a key portion of the race over the last few months, and so this isn't totally uncommon, right? But particularly given sort of the nationalization of politics, right? The idea that Americans are paying more and more attention to and thinking about the national political parties, it's certainly a trend worth watching.
And have you ever seen a national figure play a role in a Kentucky statewide race?
Yeah, probably not to this extent, and I think part of that is Bevin's strategy in and of itself, right? That he's tying himself and his positions very closely to President Trump, and he's made this a key part of his ad campaign. We know President Trump's going to be coming for a visit right before the election itself, and so I think part of this is Bevin's approach, and he's certainly invited the connection with and ties with President Trump.
What responses have you seen from Andy Beshear's campaign when it comes to President Trump, who is, as we know, very popular in Kentucky?
Yeah, it's almost like the campaigns are fighting, sort of two very different strategic approaches here. Bevin, with sort of these close national ties with Trump and the Republican Party, and the Beshear campaign saying, no, what we want to keep the focus on is local Kentucky issues. We don't want to talk about President Trump. We don't want to talk about these national policy matters. To whatever extent we can avoid those discussions, we're going to keep the focus much more locally here.
Does anything stand out to you about the tone of Beshear versus Bevin?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a somewhat negative race. I don't know if it's been the most negative race we've ever seen in American politics, but there's certainly been attack ads from the Bevin campaign talking about some of the Beshear campaign policies, and again tying them to these sort of national trends. And we've seen it with the Beshear campaign as well. We know these two have fought a lot of court battles against one another over the last year and a half or 2 years. And so many of those arguments that played out in court with respect to pension reform and things of this nature have played out in the campaign.
And do you think that, Governor Bevin has said before that this is a sign of how 2020 is going to go for President Donald Trump? Do you believe that in that sense, or do you think that Kentucky is unique?
Yeah, I mean, so observers are definitely paying attention to the race because it's one of the few races we get in 2019 that has sort of this national dimension to it. And so there's a lot of interest in reading the tea leaves about what's going to happen in national politics and in the presidential election heading into 2020. Certainly Kentucky is unique, right? We know that, voter registration, Trump's approval rating in Kentucky is different than it is nationally. But so we can't expect the same thing to happen in Kentucky that's going to play out at the national level. But it certainly may provide a signal, right, as to how the Democratic and Republican parties are going to be situated going into next general election season.
Now, it seems like, national versus domestic in terms of Kentucky issues. What issues do you think that projected voters are going to be focusing on when they go to cast their ballots?
Yeah, so interestingly, there's a recent analysis that came out that said that the vast majority of ad campaign spending in the Kentucky governor's race has focused on issues of immigration and abortion. And this is certainly something that's been a part of Governor Bevin's advertising strategy. So these are two of the major issues that have both local and national reverberations. But certainly there's other issues that the Beshear campaign has highlighted in terms of access to health care, in terms of pension reform and the pension plans within the state that have garnered a lot of attention. So those are probably four of the biggest ones that the campaign has been fought over. And I expect those to be some of the most key ones when it comes to voter decision making next month.
Are these issues that past Kentucky elections have focused on? Obviously, 2015, we had Governor Bevin in that race as well, running against Jack Conway, the Democratic candidate.
Yeah, certainly they have been issues that have been discussed before, but again, with the increasing nationalization of politics, right? These discussions of things like illegal immigration, I think have ramped up in this election cycle, particularly when it comes to Kentucky, which we think about isn't a border state, but this has gained some attention in terms of advertising and how the campaign is played out.
Now, is there a specific region of Kentucky you think that either candidate will specifically focus on in these last 9 days of the race?
Yeah, I'm not sure about sort of the candidates' regional strategy, and they certainly have polling that's going to guide them in terms of where they want to focus and what voters they want to turn out. Central Kentucky's always interesting for the mix of interest it brings into play, Lexington versus other areas in the region itself. But it's not clear to me right off the bat, what the candidates' strategies will be on that. Keeping in mind that their motivation is going to be really, particularly at this point, turning out their own voters, right? So the campaign has been pretty well ensconced in terms of the narratives that we're seeing play out. It's not likely, unless we get a lot of new information, that many voters are going to be changing their minds. Most voters state that they're aware of these candidates, right? They sort of know and they have opinions about them at this point. And so a lot of the campaign focus, I think, in the coming days is going to be getting the voters that support their own candidates out to the polls on Election Day.
Can't believe it's only 9 days away from now.
Here, yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Zillis. Thank you for taking the time to watch this panel discussion. We'll have more State of the Commonwealth on LEX 18 after the break.